Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Powerful Man Show. I am your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host and master coach, Mark Smith. Mark, thanks for being here, brother.
Thank you, Doug. It's always great to have a conversation with you. I'm looking forward to today.
Oh, I am too. I've been excited about this. We had to cancel this last week, because I wasn't 100%, and you were so generous to do it. And we keep talking about doing more and more of these, and the response has been amazing. Guys, for those of you that aren't familiar with Mark, first of all, you should get familiar with Mark. First of all, a kick-ass cool guy, but secondarily, a world-renowned, amazing coach, and he is the man that most of our guys are going to get introduced as they start going through the activation method. So, we've shared Mark's story on previous podcasts, so go back and see some of that. Again, we're just touching it's like the tip of the iceberg, right? You've all seen that picture where you see that iceberg and then you see under the ocean how massive it is, what you can't see. And that's how I would describe Mark and his history. It's just nothing's hidden. It's just you've had such breadth and depth to you that most people don't realize it. So guys, definitely check that out. This is going to be an exciting conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Doug. And you're always so generous with your praise. And I think, that says an awful lot about you. And there's obviously also an incredible amount of skill and wisdom in you that you don't brag about. So at some stage, maybe we should have a podcast conversation where you actually tell your story a little
bit. Someday. It's hard. Tim likes talking about what he does. No. I always joke that all of us are almost like we're brotherly. We call it the brotherhood is our mastermind, but it is, and in brothers, I have two brothers, and the way we show love is by making fun of each other and poking at each other a little bit. And it's a good little roasting. So anyway, so you threw an interesting conversation topic on the table. I'll let you kind of intro it and lead us there.
Sure. Well, it came from you, Doug. You put this post on Workplace about the deer and the wolf, and I love that image of the guy eating raw meat. Sort of having done a lot of that myself, and now being a vegetarian, it was a bit strange, but. I love the creative tension between the deer and the wolf, and it really spoke to me because, as you said, through the activation method, I speak to a lot of guys, and I find a lot of them getting stuck into the deer kind of mode and don't really know how to get out of it. It seems to be something that has become a habitual pattern, and probably even taught by parents. Their dynamic then leads to the guy going, okay, well, that's how to make a woman happy, is that I've just got to be the deer. I've got to what is the acronym? Defend, explain, excuse, and rationalize. And then I added rescue. So we'll get into that a little bit more, but I thought that we could start with you giving us a definition of the deer first, and then talk to us about the wolf.
Yeah. So DEAR, as you said, is an acronym. And again, guys, what you can see yourself in this deer mode, right? A deer. And we'll also go with predator versus prey, but it's defending yourself, which we talk about in the 4 Horsemen training and podcast, guys, on the Facebook group and the YouTube channel. There's a 4 Horsemen training. But the 3rd horseman of the apocalypse of a marriage or a relationship is defending yourself. The second one is explaining yourself. And we'll talk about that because it's similar to defensiveness, and then excusing what's going on, and then rationalizing. And what you added to that, Mark, which I think is awesome, is rescuing, right? Yeah. And when men find themselves in the situation of deer, they find themselves subservient, right? They become the beta or the omega, but the beta in the relationship. And, energetically that switches in those roles, but that's how they find themselves. And I think what this happens, Mark, and from my experience, and I did this, by the way, early on in my marriage, because it's becoming the nice guy. It's okay. Yep. This is my wife's not happy, right? And this is the woman I want to stay with. So just leave in and what have you is not off the table, but it's not as on the table as it could be. And so I started becoming if I'm nicer, if I do more things in the house, and then when we get in arguments, I would defend myself, make an excuse for what I was doing, and rationalize the behavior. And And I found that the polarity, the energetic polarity in our relationship, was the opposite, which was so weird because I was playing competitive sports at the time. I was doing all of these other alpha things, and in business and the community, I was a leader. But I'd come home and I was prey.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very interesting. I've got a friend who, when his wife asks him to do something, he says, "Yes, dear." So that reminded me, of your acronym. And so when it comes to the deer behavior, what do you think is driving it primarily?
Yeah. So first of all, I want to just make abundantly clear that I didn't make up the DEAR acronym. So that's been out there
Okay.
before. I never want to take credit for stuff that's not mine.
Yeah, I mean,
So I
yeah.
don't want anybody to get confused on that. But what I think is driving that DEAR behavior is the desire to be the good boy, the good guy, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's, if we go back to childhood, which unless you've done a lot of work, you don't. I think most men don't want to go back there.
Hmm.
But I think it's been when you have an absentee father in the relationship, right? And the mom is kind of running the show. What's the saying? And I think most sayings are mostly true. But the wife wears the pants in the family, right?
Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
home. And I think a lot of guys, in order to get attention and love, did so as kids by being good. If I'm a good boy, then I get attention and love, et cetera, et cetera. I see that with my child, right? I see him trying
Yeah.
different things just to get attention and love, right?
Yeah. To
So I think
please.
that's where it strives from and Mark. And then for me, I literally remember, and this is almost a decade ago, but I remember trying to figure out why my wife and I were arguing, and kept thinking, all right, dude, you run at the time I was running 3 companies, right? So working wasn't an issue for me and all these things. It's like, all right, I'm going to get home. I'm going to take out the trash. All the things that she would complain that maybe I wasn't doing enough, which I didn't realize weren't her real complaints. And I'm going to do
Yeah.
this. I'm going to cook, and and I tried all these things, and then I would go into deer mode because I was trying so hard to be the good guy, and it wasn't working, which would just lead to
Mm.
frustration for me.
Yeah, so thank you for saying that. That's exactly where I wanted to go next, because the good guy actually ends up becoming the bad guy, doesn't he? When
Mhm.
frustration builds up, and then that explaining becomes snapping and all of that, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. And then it leads to contentment, right? You get content because it's like, I'm doing everything you've told me you wanted. Da da da. You hear this all the time, and guys use choice words, right? To describe
Oh
that
yeah,
woman at
sure.
this point. But she
Yeah,
cannot be satisfied. Or,
right.
and then a lot of times the woman ends up leaving for another guy who appears to be less than her husband, makes
Yeah.
less money, does less things, but he is not trapped, at least perceived to be in this deer mode, right, going through it.
Mm. Yeah, very, very interesting. And you said something earlier on about that it fluctuates as well. So, you said in competitive sports, you're doing these alpha things and you come home and then you'd get into the beta mode. It also fluctuates. There'll be situations in a relationship where the guy isn't in beta or in deer mode all of the time. Is that fair to say? That it
Oh,
fluctuates?
yeah, absolutely. And I know you and I both done a ton of work on masculine and feminine energy. Is you can dance, you can have that dance. The problem is, for a lot of guys, is they're not in that mode where they can dance with it. They're so struck into beta or beta mode, depending on what side of the Atlantic you're on. And that's where the problems can really happen. But you can, you can be dancing. There's men out there that like to be submitted in bed, right? That's their sexual turn on. Nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. The
Yeah.
thing here is the choice, right? Are
Yeah.
you being in beta mode by choice and by your desire, or are you trapped in beta mode? That's the difference.
Mm. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I've done masculine and feminine training, and you speak about energy, and a lot of guys won't necessarily get that. So, how could you describe that masculine energy and the feminine energy? So, I came up with the Latin terms anima and animus, which is how I learned about it, and I think it's useful to just wrap it up for the guys to say, what does that really entail? You get what I'm saying?
I do. And you made me Google some stuff earlier. So,
Oh, okay.
no. Anima and animus. I think, Mark, this is a long topic. So when you think of masculine and feminine energy, they're two sides of polarity, right? Masculine energy wants to, well, you can think about it this way. In business, it's predominantly a very decisive sport, right? You need to be
Yeah,
decisive. You need to be assertive, not aggressive necessarily, but assertive.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
masculine energy, right? That's
yeah,
kind of the energetic force that comes through there. Now, guys, if you can imagine two magnets, two rectangle magnets is what I'm picturing in my head, about 2 inches, or Mark, you can help me out with the centimeters here, but two magnets. And there's
yeah,
polarity, right? If you turn them one way, they attract to each other. But if you turn them the opposite way, they repel. And I'll come back to why that's important. Now, feminine energy is going to be more the creative aspect. It's wild, it's free. When you think about free flowing dance, art, poetry, right? Cooking
mm,
can be considered, but
mm,
cooking can go both ways. You can get really masculine in
yeah,
cooking as well, as you can with the other ones. But, bell shaped curve, right? 80%
yeah,
of things fall into this path. And what happens here is, for example, a very masculine man could decide that he wants to tap into his feminine energy by painting, doing poetry, or something else. You want to
mm,
have both of these energies in your life naturally. But again, it's the choice. What happens with a lot of relationships, and this happened with my wife and I early on, is if, like the magnets, if you both have the same polarity, right? Positive or negative polarity. So two feminine energies. If you're being a deer and
yeah,
your wife's naturally a feminine woman, which 90% of women are, right? Then those
yeah,
magnets are going to oppose. There's going to be an opposing energy in there. So if I decide to paint, for example, as an expression of myself, which I don't do, but it would be probably a good idea for me. And my wife's in her feminine energy, the attraction there just probably isn't as visceral. However,
yeah,
and I know you have a lot of experience with this, Mark. I'm going to ask you a question here in a second. Is if you're constantly in that dance and you're mostly in your masculine, you can still be very attractive to your feminine partner when you're dipping in and out, right? Because she
right.
knows your true north is the masculine energy. It's a lighthouse. But what I'd like to know is, what could you add on to that, Mark, for an explanation for guys that are newer to this train of thought?
Mm. Yeah, I'm actually quite glad you turned it around to me because I'm learning a lot from you, Doug, and it's really great to have that visual of the magnets, and I think that creates that creative tension. And what a lot of guys don't understand is that the more masculine they are, the more feminine she allows herself to be. And one of the guys on a call earlier on, in fact, said that he took a risk. And because of wanting to be the nice guy and the fear of being what the guys will say, being a dick, the fear of behaving like that is that they'll get rejected. And actually, what it is a situation of learning how to be masculine without being a dick. So, if I'm forcing it, the path of force, because of being snappy or trying to be it turns out to be aggressive or passive aggressive, it doesn't work. But if you are genuine, if you're calm and centered and you're that lighthouse and you can breathe and you can say, hey, honey, that's not going to fly. We're going to do it this way. And this is why. Please get in the car. We're going now. Oh, yes, dear. And she goes, and the guys are scared of doing that because there's also something else I wanted to bring in around society with, we've had these things, and I think we've mentioned it before, toxic masculinity and all of that. So guys are scared of being these real powerful masculine leaders. So that's the one thing. Guys, just do it. Take a risk. Don't do it from a place of pain or fear. Do it from a place of building up your masculine head of steam and gradually get more powerful. Do things that take you step by step into your power space. You can also do really incredible things by building up to it. Before you go into the house, clear your head. We speak about the decompression. Get yourself really well exercised. It's good to have breathed out any frustration so that when you show up in a masculine fashion, it's pure And yeah, that's something that I just wanted to throw in there. The key is to be masculine from a healthy perspective, from a loving, open perspective, not from a blame and shame perspective or a bullying perspective. That's not what we're talking about.
And that's exactly right. And I think my experience, Mark, with a lot of men is when they try this on, right? They try this new thing on, they almost go overboard because it doesn't feel natural to themselves. And it didn't to me either,
Yeah.
guys, because, my whole life I was taught you never hit, and I still don't. Never hit, yell at
Mm-hmm.
women. You don't raise your voice. You treat them with respect and admiration and da da da. And that's great to a point, right? And it was almost ingrained in me as an overkill of being the extra Mr. Nice guy.
Yeah.
And ironically, in my dating life, when I wasn't that guy and I took care of me, I was more attractive to women.
Yeah.
So if I can, one thing that I think could be helpful, guys, when you think about it, okay, how do I be this masculine guy? Mark's saying, get your kit and get in the car and we're gonna go, right? It's energetic. And what the heck does that mean, right? So the way I think about it sometimes is if a good friend of yours comes to give you advice on something you need to do, like I won't say, hey John, man, you really need to quit drinking so much at night. You're blacking out. It's not cool, man. And it's not what you want for your future. And I care
Yeah.
about you. If he comes and says that to you, it's going to hit you. And like, wow, this guy really, he's my boy. He's got me. Right.
Yeah.
The same conversation could be, John, you're drinking too much. You're blacking out. It's not cool. Right. That's a different energy. Same comment, but one, it could be defensive. Like, whoa, like, why are you attacking me? The same thing comes with this masculine energy. If you come about it, but you're really centered, as Mark was saying, you've done your alpha decompression, you're centered in yourself, and you're doing it from a loving space of I'm doing this for us, that she'll pick up on that quickly, and you'll know right away her response will be like, whoa, who is this guy? Like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah, my wife will tell you that being the deer is simply not sexy. She says to me, I don't want another woman in a relationship with me. She says that, if I wanted another woman, then I would go for a woman. So women want men. They want men to be free. And, there was that song, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? I think it was, who was it? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Had her name on the tip of my tongue. I think she went out with Lance Armstrong, actually.
Yes.
Or maybe it was Shania Twain. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So let's get into to help the guys so they know what dear is like and how to be yes dear, okay?
Yeah.
And where it comes from. What about the masculine? How do we create more of that masculine? We've spoken about it in short order, but to step into that wolf power, what other than joining the brotherhood, what do you think is a way to do that so that the guys can get a grip of the path?
Yeah. So we talk about in The Powerful Man is becoming the wolf versus the deer. And Mark, you developed a great acronym for that, which we can share with the guys as well. And what happens is us as guys, we get deactivated. That's why we have the activation method, which is what Mark leads for men all over the world. But besides joining the activation method, what can you do? Well, you can start by taking care of yourself. And part of that is also the easiest thing for most guys, in my experience, and this could be my background, is lifting heavy weights, doing weight training or some kind of rigorous exercises that's going to raise testosterone. It's going to raise your confidence. You're going to look sexier, right? When you look better, you feel better. Just bottom line. If you've been walking around like a marshmallow, cool. Just be honest with yourself and start working out and exercising and taking care of it. So that's one thing you can do. Another thing that, we often have guys do pretty quickly is getting real and honest with yourself. And that's the toughest thing, is get real with where you are. Because what I think, Mark, happens to a lot of guys and me as well, is we lie to ourselves, right? We lie to ourselves more than we lie to anybody else, of where we think we're more masculine or more alpha, perhaps, than we really are. And the data, the feedback that we're getting in our relationship shows otherwise. So I think you really got to get honest with yourself there.
Can I share something there?
What's that?
Can I just share something?
Uh,
I'm listening to David Goggins' book "Can't Hurt Me" at the moment, and I'm loving it. So when I'm going running in the morning, I've got David Goggins, sort of this Navy SEAL who's been in the ocean carrying a log or carrying a canoe or something, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to run 5Ks. I don't really feel like running 6 or 7, and David Goggins is in my ears. Okay, I'll run 6 or 7. I'll keep going.
yeah.
I'll sprint up that hill. So what he's got is a brilliant tool, which you kind of alluded to there about getting real with yourself. He calls it the accountability mirror. So he looks in the mirror and he gives himself a talking to, is a reality check, and I think that's a great tool to use.
Yeah, mirror work is absolutely amazing. There's a lot of ways you can use it. I mean, David Goggins. I mean, can you imagine that guy? There's a great book where living with a Navy SEAL. I think that's what it's called, and where David Goggins actually goes and lives with a guy for a month in his house,
Oh
he and
yeah,
his
yeah,
wife.
yeah,
But definitely
yeah,
worth checking out. It's a fun book. But anyway, yeah, it's exactly what it is. Other things you can do to step into your masculine is really start doing more masculine things. And what
mm.
the heck are those, Doug? Well, a lot of them are traditional things. We don't have
You took the question right out of my mouth.
well, a lot of we don't have a rite of passage anymore as men. You could think throughout
Yeah,
history, we've had a lot of rites of passage. And I know Mark, along with Arthur, are working on a whole program for fathers. And we'll talk
yeah,
about that another time. We'll get you back on. But having
yeah,
a rite of passage, masculine things are, adventure, right? Adventure is a
yeah,
very masculine energy. Do you go mountaineering, mountain biking, out into, nature can be very feminine, but it can also be very masculine depending on what you're doing in nature. And
yeah,
getting grounded is a very
mm,
masculine energy to be in
mm,
there. You can also think about other traditional masculine, manly things, and start doing them, right?
yeah,
Start trying them out.
yeah. Um, Absolutely love that. And you said earlier on heavy weights. What works for me is just doing push-ups. If I'm feeling frustrated or feeling as if I've somehow given away my power, or I'm not breaking through a barrier, an invisible barrier, I'll drop and do 25 or 40 push-ups, and just keep going until the frustration's gone. Another thing I learned from an enlightened master from India called Osho, whom I've
Mhm.
got great respect for. He had a meditation. He used to really promote active and really practical meditation, not just sitting there going om. And one of the phases in the dynamic meditation was literally jumping on the balls of your feet and just like doing that, to get that masculine energy, literally
Mhm.
drop into your balls, really feel that. And I had a couple of guys on the one activation method group who said that they found that really useful. And I also sent them a video of the guys of the New Zealand rugby team doing the haka, you know, doing something tribal, like that is really good for us. Chopping wood, doing those kinds of things is fantastic for that. To just get that sense of masculinity, because we are knowledge workers these days. We work on screens, we're not using our bodies to their full extent.
Yeah, it was a funny aside to that, if I can, is I was at an event and it was men and women, so it was mixed, and I want to say 3,000 plus people, so big event. And they did part of it was dancing. It was like energetic dancing. And so they put on some very flowy music, which was like, oh, okay. But you know how it is. You're at an event. You're going to try this on, right? If I'm here, I'm
Yeah,
going
yeah,
all in. And you start dancing around with some of the women, and then it turns on to more like electric music, which has got okay, it's a little bit more aggressive beat. But what happened, Mark, is they then put on tribal music, big drum
mm,
beats and everything. And probably about 20 of us guys just magnetically came together. And like, I'm talking very big masculine guys dancing almost like a haka type dance. And the energy that created, and the fact that all of us got
yeah,
drawn into each other immediately, just
mm,
showcases the power for what you're talking about of sinking into yourself, whether it be your balls or whatever.
mm.
You just feel that
Yeah,
collective energy that most of us never
mm,
have the opportunity to experience, right? And once you've
yeah.
experienced it, it's hard to get away from that.
Mm. I wonder if we could tune ourselves to a specific number of hertz that is feminine and number of hertz that's masculine. That would be amazing, wouldn't it?
That would be
Just thinking of that music, because I know for myself, I do drumming with a djembe drum. When I'm in South Africa, I've got a circle of guys and we drum together, and I think I'm brilliant. But of course, when my wife has heard me, she said, "No, no, it's terrible," but we enjoy it. And we get into a rhythm. But I get it that that sort of vibration through your body is a good thing for masculinity. So the acronym that I came up with was for the wolf is WWISE, and maybe you can say something about each of these as we go through them. O for open, L for loving, and F for fierce. Should we go through that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sure, you came up with the acronym. I just think it's amazing that we're going through. So let's both bounce back and forth. So what's WWISE
Sure.
mean for you?
Well, instead of reacting, responding, a considered response. Not she has a need, and then suddenly I'm either rescuing her or I'm explaining myself or whatever, being in effect of her needs, moods, or wants or desires. It's being wise enough to be able to stand back and to make a choice as to what I'm going to do here and whether it's for me or not.
Love it. Absolutely. And I think that it is tapping into that wisdom, right? And to me, the wise also is just being centered, right? That's one of the things I
Yeah.
think of being wise is you're not
Mm.
reactionary, you're being centered and you're able to determine the course that is best for you and your family.
Yeah. Okay. And then open. What does open say to you in terms of the wolf?
Yeah. So I think, and this was an interesting one. You and I talked a little bit about this offline. We're off recording. Open to me is a symbol that you are secure with yourself, right? Which is the truth to me. It's the true sense of power, right? A powerful man, and if you think about almost you go into a movie in your head, right? The big
Mm.
strong guy or the powerful guy doesn't need to put armor on because he knows he can handle the situation, whether he be a ninja, or whatever it
Yeah,
means.
yeah, yeah.
He can handle it. Whereas the really weak guy has to put on layers of armor because he doesn't know how to protect or attack or whatever. And I think that
Mm.
happens emotionally for us as guys. I think that if we're
Yeah.
not given the tools to realize how strong we are and how to harness that strength and be activated, then we can't be open. We close ourselves down by putting these walls up, these masks of who we want the world to think we are. And
Right.
therefore, we have to really close down.
I love that because, as you said, we spoke offline, and it's really around the inner child putting on layers of protection, not knowing how to show up, and really the powerful man having systematically peeled the onion, taken away those layers of protection to be able to say, this is who I am. I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling uh, whatever. I'm feeling confused right now, or I'm scared of this. And that creates healthy masculinity, because it's those shells and those shields and overacting as a result, which probably leads to the toxic masculinity, which isn't masculinity really. It's a kid acting out and getting freaked out and then doing stupid things, right?
100%. Yeah. I mean, anybody that has kids or has been around, raising kids, you see that teenager aspect or that, the 11, 12-year-old having a temper tantrum. And that's what the toxic
Mm.
masculinity really becomes.
Yeah, yeah. I put holes in the wall at my parents' home when I was a teenager.
You and me both.
Yeah. Well, this is a wonderful journey. And then the L for loving, Doug. A lot of guys, um, could perhaps confuse this with being, we think that we're in the deer mode when we're rescuing or rationalizing. We think that we're being loving, but that's kind of um, one of my favorite words is obsequious. It's kind of please love me. Rather than what's the difference between a wolf loving?
Well, I think you nailed it, right? So loving as a wolf is it's unconditional loving, right? Because you're so
Yeah,
centered within yourself that you I don't need my wife. I don't need Mark to love me. I want Mark to love me, but I don't need Mark to love me to have my own sense of who I am as a guy, right? I, the, my cup fills itself from within to pour over into others rather than me running around to everybody. We use the cup, guys, as the analogy of how full you feel within inside of yourself.
yeah,
I think a lot of guys in deer mode are running to their wife saying, fill me with love, fill me with attention. And what the women are running to their kids, right? That's a
Mm.
common thing in a marriage. Whereas the wolf,
Yeah.
which again, I love your acronym on love here, and is really about I have the love within me. I don't need it from you. We can have it reciprocated, right? With my wife, we come together and that love builds and flourishes, but I don't need it. I think it's
Mm.
a big difference. How about you?
Well, actually, I was just thinking as you were speaking there, something that I think will really help the guys is to love themselves, because that for me is something that's missing. If you put yourself last to your family, your business, your wife's needs, your parents, and everybody else, and you put yourself last, your cup is empty. So you need to love yourself. And it took me years, and as you know, I've done 26 years of working on myself because I needed to probably. It was really apparent at some stage, not from an egoic perspective, but from a real perspective, that I need to really love myself. I mean, what's the point of walking around in this uh, body and caring for everybody else and living my life without loving myself enough to really enjoy who I am and how I experience those people around me? Because when I'm full of love, then I can give more.
Man, I can tell you from so I'm mad. I know that the old me listening to this is like, what do you mean love yourself? I remember, Mark, when my wife being one, but also some other amazing teachers told me, yeah, Doug, you need to learn to love yourself. I was literally, I'm a grown man at this point. I'm going, what do they mean love yourself? I love myself. What are they talking about? And I left on a journey by myself going from Santa Barbara, California, and I was headed to Crested Butte, Colorado, which if you guys don't know, it's a journey. And I stopped by Bryce Canyon. So I'm by myself and I decided to hike in the Narrows in Bryce Canyon. If you guys have been there, you know what it looks like. Of course, you can Google it. It's almost a mystical, spiritual place. And on that path, I spent that whole time from the drive and the hike focusing on self love and trying to learn and listening to books and reading and trying to get in tune with myself. Fast forward to a month in that experience in Crested Butte and everywhere else coming back, I had a new appreciation and realization. Again, just the tip of the iceberg, though, at the time of what it meant. And I can tell you guys listening to this right now, based on my experience and experience, seeing thousands of men go through these programs and just working with guys, is this is a big missing factor. And it's like one of those things that you don't, at least in my experience, Mark, you don't realize you need, right? Until you start to taste it and you're like, oh, wow, this is
Yeah,
what people are talking about.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I love that, and I love that. As you were talking there, I was imagining myself in Colorado, in that place. I'd love to go hiking there one day. We must set up some outdoor adventures for the guys. Definitely.
We'll do it. We'll do an experience. We'll schedule an event. We'll get the guys out there, and you and I will head off into the
Yeah.
mountains as well.
Okay. Wonderful.
So,
The last one is fierce. F for fierce. What does that say to you?
wow. So when you first said fierce to me before we just jumped on here, the first thing I thought about was aggressively going after your life, like living life
Okay.
as if it was your last. And so there's this, I can't remember who said it, but it was a saying, I think it goes back to ancient Greece, that in order to live, you have to die to live.
Mm, mm,
And I think a lot of people play it cautiously. Oh, Mark, you want me to be alpha? You want me to try this on? But what is my wife going to do? Da, 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 da. Look, if you're in a sexless marriage or your marriage isn't working, who cares? Right? You got
what have
to
you got to
change.
lose?
Yeah. You got to change something. Right. Same
Yeah.
thing. If you're in a job you don't like or love, change it. Like you got to go after life as if this is the only one that you have. Maybe you got more. I respect everybody's religious beliefs, but I think we can
Mm,
all agree that we have at least this one. And
yeah.
and so why not play full out with this one? Fiercely
Yeah.
loving, fiercely contributing, fiercely what have you. So that's what came to me,
Yeah.
Mark. I'd love to hear when you wrote down the word fierce, what came up for you.
No, it was interesting because I had to recently set a boundary with my daughter, who's been, daddy, rescue me, save me, and I have held back, and it's been really tough for me. And I sent her a message to say to her, my job is not to rescue you. My job is to be your dad and to teach you how capable you are of being this magnificent young woman that I see you to be. And then I sent her another message because I thought this was, I was putting her in her place to say, go after it. And then I followed it up with a message, I love you fiercely. And that was really what stood out for me is doing what it takes, stepping to the line, as Tim would put it, and really being willing to, step into the best version of me that's possible and take a risk. I mean, we do live quite contained lives and comfortable lives. And, this David Goggins book has really got me thinking about, the creature comfort. And there's a whole lot of stuff that we don't need. We can really, really get a whole lot more out of life by adopting a kind of a fierce approach to whatever, whether it's, running up a hill, or it's loving your wife, or growing your business, or whatever. Just grab some fierceness, and fierce is I think it's a wonderful word, because it's not angry or anything that's over the top. It's kind of raw. I see it as being that raw power. Yeah, and I've seen in a lion's eyes when I was in South Africa. I had the privilege to be very close to a lion, and it was a lioness actually, and she was behind a fence, and I was on a bicycle ride, and I just saw that there was a gate that was open, and I went and crouched down. It was a camp where the lions were kept, I think, when they were, I don't know, being either adopted or being convalesced, or whatever it happens to be. And she was just lying there, and I stared into these big yellow eyes, and I just felt raw power, and I know that she's fierce. And it's just below the surface, it's just bristling and bridling with power, So that's what I kind of meant by it.
Wow. Yeah. What a picture.
Yeah,
I think that's beautiful. And I think that, we talk about this a lot at The Powerful Man. The scariest thing for a guy to do is raise their hand and say, you know what, I'm going to change my life. Right. Cause it's scary to admit, and it's scary to do your mirror work. Have a conversation with the man in the mirror, you know,
yeah,
um, Michael Jackson's got that song, I'm looking at the man in the mirror.
yeah,
Maybe not the most masculine example, but point being, looking at the man in the mirror, and, where to be fierce, but we also talk a lot about courage, right? And they're close, they're similar in some ways. And courage is really is not being scared. And I think a lot of people miss that. Courage is
yeah,
being scared, but doing it anyway, right? And making it happen, which makes me think of fierce as well.
yeah. Yeah, I'm scared often, Doug. Let me just say that. Sometimes I see what my day has got lined up, and maybe I don't feel fully prepared, or I think to myself, what if, and I get into that headspace, and then what we said earlier on helps me is that I'll do some push-ups. I'll really get into something masculine. When I'm home in South Africa, I've got a punch bag that's hanging up, and I'll go and hit the punch bag, or chop some wood, and that helps me kind of get out of my head, because I think a lot of masculinity is about getting into our bodies and out of
Yeah.
our heads as well. We overanalyze, and then worry and fret, and then get into the deer mode. And so I think there's a physiological route to getting into the masculine. Have you got any other tips for the guys to get them into the masculine that have come up for you?
I think there's a lot of little ones that can happen in there. And, I've done this with a couple guys that, getting them into the rhythm is finding a masculine character or a video. There's a million clips on YouTube or things like that. Guys, use Mark, go on YouTube and look at this. Use Mark as your example, right? And embody that masculine character for just a little bit and get into that role. What would he do? Right. A lot of guys, fathers, like we talk about this. We like to, what dad would you be? Well, if someone messes with my daughter, I'm Liam Neeson and Taken, right? I've got a set of
Yeah.
skills. I think every
Yeah.
man likes that an idea, and you can kind of embody it a
Mm.
little bit, right? You can do say the same thing in this other masculinity and just feel what it feels like and just start doing it and get repetition in
Mm.
there. Or as Mark says, wake up in the morning, do some push-ups, get that energy moving in your body, or a punching bag. Or I have right next to my desk, I have kettlebells, a mace, and other things to do it. Same idea, right? I'll walk around before a call or something where I need to evoke that energy even more.
Mm.
Um, Maybe for some of you guys, if it's been a long, long time, get involved in martial arts, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, or something where you're having, it's a challenge yourself is, I
Mm.
guess, what I'm trying to say, but challenge yourself
Yeah.
physically as well as
Mm.
mentally. And I think you're going to see all kinds of areas of your life open up. Um, and get in there. Of course, I'm biased, Mark, but I also think the activation method is a great way for men to get activated. I
Yeah.
used to never talk about it, and then I was like, you know what? I'm doing a disservice if I don't just be honest and admit that I think it's a great way for guys to do it. I totally realize
Yeah.
it's guys are either too scared to jump in, or for whatever reason it's not the right time for them. And so there's other
Hmm.
things that you guys can do to get into it. I'm not saying it's the only way. It's just
Yeah.
a way to do it that I think is really good. But whatever you
Yeah.
do, to Mark's point, is be fierce and do something,
Yeah.
right? Don't just listen to this as educational masturbation, just going on to the next podcast, to the next one, to the next one. Man, I used to digest like 30 podcasts in a day, out for walking meditations or whatever. It's the action. Listen to one. You're
Mm.
listening to this one now. Take massive action on the insights that you get.
Yeah. And that's masculine energy taking action, right?
Mhm.
so
There you
so
go.
that helps. Yeah, so I love that whole thing of imagining. I tend to think of those guys who had the swords and the shields in the old days, and I'm sitting here in battle in England, where the Battle of Hastings took place, and what won the battle was archery. So my martial art used to be judo when I was younger. Now it's archery, which is a little bit more zen, but yeah, there's a lot of value in really bringing up that masculine energy in yourself. And as Doug was just saying, you can do some really simple things to start building that up. And a good thing, get angry with yourself. Get angry with the fact that you're stagnating, or that you're feeling like a bit like a muffin, or whatever it happens to be. Get a bit pissed off and do something about it. I think that's great. When my daughter the other day, when she was getting angry with me, I left her a voice message and I said, "That's great. Get angry, get feisty. I love it. Then you're going to do something." And guess what? She's gone out and created some opportunities. So there you have it.
Yeah. I think all too often, I know we want to get too many tangents, but all too often we think anger is a bad emotion. I don't think there are any bad
No.
emotions.
Nope.
And I think anger can be harnessed in such a great way. I mean, imagine in sport, right? Most of the men that come through the program played sport at one point or another, whether it be rugby, football, soccer, what have you. And remember getting angry during a sport and caused you to run faster or catch up or hit a little
Mm.
harder or whatever it is. That's channeled anger. And that's what you're talking about, is take
Yeah.
that anger, get angry at yourself. Crap, I've been in this deer mode for a year, 10 years, 20 years, right? For
Mm.
some guys, whatever it's been. Cool. Now I know better. I'm pissed that I've been doing this. Now let's channel it and take some massive action. Jump down,
Yeah.
do 20 push-ups. If you're like Mark, maybe it's 40, but do some push-ups and then you actually hit it and take some massive action, guys. Because again, it's just going to be a problem more and more.
Mm.
So, Mark, what
I
are
love that.
in wrapping up this conversation? What are 3 takeaways you'd like guys to get out of this conversation?
Don't wait. There's no time like the present. Because if you're inspired by this conversation, act on it now. Don't allow the deer to come and sort of wrap some lovely fur over you and snuggle you back under the duvet of comfort and mediocrity, or whatever it happens to be. So that's the one thing, is take action straight away. Another thing for me would be get another guy to buddy up with you. I know it's been COVID and all of those things, but I found that I got up at all sorts of hours in the morning and went for a 100-kilometer bike ride every Saturday and every Sunday because I had a cycling partner. I knew it at 5:30 or 6 a.m. He would be waiting for me, and I couldn't let him down. So, and vice versa, it worked for him. So we'd meet and then go for a ride. So that's the second thing. What would be a third thing? I'd say probably that you will thank yourself down the line. You may not see it now, but your relationship will benefit from you taking risks and getting into your masculinity in a way that is strong, healthy, and consistent. And just keep going and keep building it, because you'll create that tension between the masculine and the feminine, and she will thank you for it, and so will your children. Because if you're a father, you're a leader of little girls and little boys, and they're looking up to you to see how it's done. So if you're not going to do it for yourself and love yourself enough, then at least do it for them.
Love that. Massive leverage, right? So guys, listen to what Mark has to say here. I mean, years and decades, of experience, not only
making me seem old.
Leading yourself. Well, you said 26 years, I think, that you've been working on this stuff with yourself, but also coaching other people to do it their way in the best way possible. So take Mark's words, guys, and again, take some massive action. Mark, always amazing talking to you. Thanks so much for making the time today, man. I really appreciate you being on here.
Anytime, Doug. You just have to give me a time and a Zoom meeting, and I will be here.
Sounds great. Well, I'll take you up on that. Gentlemen, as always, take massive action. Like we said, let's listen to Mark's words, maybe go back and rewind this and listen to especially his last 3 takeaways. And guys, if this is your first time here with us, go over to thepowerfulman.com/bonus. You can pick up the Reignite cheat sheet. That's a great way to use in your relationship right now. It's practical. It's free, right? There's no barrier here for you to get that. And if you've been with us for a little while, what I'd love for you guys to do is, I always say leave a review, but I'd love for you to go to the Facebook group and leave a comment. Let us know what you got from this particular podcast, this show. If you're on YouTube, you can drop a comment in there. Of course, a lot of you guys are getting this on iTunes or Spotify. So run over to that Facebook group and just drop a comment. Be fierce about it and step into your wolf rather than hiding out, making excuses, etc., and be the deer. All right, gentlemen, as always, have an amazing week. We'll see you next time on The Powerful Man Show.